And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome to Coffee Talk. That is Coffee Talk live, and we are live on YouTube at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So at Coffee Talk live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, broadcasting simultaneously on both channels. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, and Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. As I sit here with Granny Smith, keeping me company for a minute until she gets antsy and wants to get down, but that's fine. You see little Granny Smith here. Hi, how you doing? You want to move? Okay, you can get down. Here. Granny Smith wants to go. You all right? Daniel's not going to bother you. Relax. Anyways, one of the shelter cats, I guess you can call them. I don't know what to call them. They're strays that we've taken in. Sometimes they get rehomed. Sometimes they stay. Not sure what to do with this one. She doesn't seem to want to leave. As I go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that are joining us in the live portion here. And for those of you who are listening and not able to see, I do try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable so that you can keep up with the conversation, follow along with what's going on and what's being said and what's being done as we read through some of the news of the day. Some things you may know about, maybe some things you don't. And I see Helter is here today, Dragon, Donna Beaver, Boogers is here, Monkey is here, Josie Hickman is here from West Virginia, Urban Angst. Donna reminds everybody to thumbs up. Yes, absolutely. Much appreciated. Any thumbs up I can get. They say it helps with the algorithm. I think that's a lie. I don't think anything helps with the algorithm unless you're in bed with Google. But I'll take all the thumbs up I can get. Rodney is here from New Zealand. And Spectre is here. He says he's on time. Yeah, I think you are. I think you're on time, Spectre. And then All People is here, as well as Gary Smith thus far, chiming in to say hello as we get ready to look at what's going on in the world today. What's happening in the world? Too much of one thing and not enough of another. And Josie says, I see the government wants to stop all the visas from Israel. Do they? Well, speaking of government, here's a really feeble attempt by the government to try and make Kamala Harris important. And this has been all over the news ahead of everything else. There's a ton of stories about this. And I see D'Lo has joined us. Glad you could make it today. You haven't missed too much, D'Lo. And this is from the Washington Post. And there you see Kamala Harris leaving, walking away from her historic vote. This is top news. This is the big story. This is all over the place. This is all over the place. And it's frozen up. Something happened. Something happened to there it is. It's popped back up again. I don't know why it did that. Vice President Harris casts record-setting vote in the Senate. Big deal. Vice President Harris on Tuesday cast her 32nd tie-breaking vote to confirm Lauren Alicon, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, to be a U.S. District Judge for the District of Columbia, making history with the most deciding votes in the chamber by a vice president. The 32 tie-breaking Senate votes that Harris has cast since assuming office in 2021 top a 191-year-old record set by John Calhoun as vice president to John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. Calhoun had broken 31 Senate ties by the time he left office in 1832. Harris has tied Calhoun's record in July with a tie-breaking vote to add employment attorney Kalpana Kodagal to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. Are these votes even that important? And the thing that gets me, I'll read a little bit more here and I'll get to my point. It says Tuesday's vote on Ali Khan's nomination stalled at 50-50, with Senator Joe Manchin III voting with Republicans in the closely divided Senate. So he voted no, and he's a Democrat. You have to say he voted with the Republicans, and we wonder why there's such a big divide between who people vote for. It says Democrats and the three independents who caucus with them holds 51 seats, while Republicans hold 49, blah, blah, blah. The reason I think this is interesting is how anything that they want you to think is important, it's a split down the middle decision now, hanging by a thread. It's a runoff election. It has to be redone because the votes were too close. We've seen it several times in Georgia in the last couple of years. What is it with this, with all these big mayoral votes and Senate votes and gubernatorial votes, that it's 50-50 all of a sudden? It's so down the middle. To me, it feels like a fraud. When I see that happening constantly, I think there's something fishy about it personally. Also, so she broke a record from 1832. And is she a good vice president because of that? Not really. Not really. Not hardly. Rodney says, I, for one, am hoping that the World War III is postponed until after Christmas. Yeah, I mean, you don't want it to interfere with your shopping. And Deanna says, having sablefish with crab meat stuffing. Okay. And Spectre says, putting her in charge of this is like putting Pee Wee Herman in charge of the Pentagon. Pee Wee Herman would get something done, though. And the warden is here. Glad she could make it, the warden. Again, this is just an attempt to make her look important. Everybody thinks that she's a blistering idiot. I mean, who goes on a visit to France and speaks to French government officials with a French accent? Who does that? What is she, like 6 years old? It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. We know how she got the job. We know why she was hired. It's so that diversity, equity, and inclusion BS is why she got hired. And never mind how she got in politics in the first place. Never mind about that. We'll just leave that alone for the time being. But she broke a tie. There's too many ties. I think they're fraudulent. I think it's supposed to make us think that everything is so close and so divided and so down the middle. Spectre says a child does that. And Gary says Kamala does that too. Yeah, I see that. And Josie says, since the virus and the war, what should I say? Wars. I've been living in the bunker. I feel like I'm in 1960s somewhere and we're playing duck and cover. Yeah, 1960s. Well, they don't tell you to duck and cover anymore. Who is that? Tommy Turtle says duck and cover, if I remember correctly. And D. McGill, it says, having an idiot involved has always existed in governments. She's celebrated, though. Yeah, she's very celebrated. She's put on a pedestal. They act like she's very important. She was only brought in because she's female and she's allegedly black, because she's not exactly black, but she claims to be, and it's close enough. And I brought it up before, whatever that radio station is in Atlanta, all black radio station. And they had said, because I was listening that day, they weren't going to vote for Biden, but now that Kamala Harris is there, they will, because it'll put a black person in office. And that will prove what? It will change what? It will help what? Has it proved anything, changed anything, helped anything? Wouldn't you rather have someone qualified in office? No. We want someone in there for their skin color. And Booger says it's Bert the Turtle, I do believe. Dad went through school when that was going on. I can't remember. Monkey says everything is all DEI over mediocrity. And Gary says, I thought she claimed to be Indian. I have no idea. I'm confused about it. I'm confused about it myself. I know there's been a lot of claims like that thrown. Hell, even Obama claiming to be black. He's not exactly black, is he? You know, not trying to be funny about it, but he's a mulatto. He's half and half of something. And that, that's neither here nor there. But he claims to be either one or the other when it's convenient, strategically convenient for him, is what that is. And All People has a few things about Kamala Harris there. It says she has 0% black blood, despite claiming 12.5% since 2018. Is that what it is? And her mother is 100% East Indian, and her dad is 75% white and 25% of color. I see. Interesting. So her mother's a Punjab. Monkey says, I might meant to say about DEI over merit. It's all right, Monkey. Josie says they like to put people in government. They're just puppets. Should I get your agenda done with their planning? Yeah, I know. It's just a face. It's just a face. Speaking of faces, here's something about Fauci. You remember Fauci, don't you? You remember him. And this article comes from the Washington Examiner. A scientist who helped Fauci discredit the lab leak theory is now speaking out. It's a little late now, buddy. Although at the time, honestly, he couldn't say anything about being coerced. And that's what he's talking about here, that he was coerced into covering certain things up to push a narrative for the C virus for the government under Fauci's administration. That's what where this is going. And things don't go well for whistleblowers or people who even try. I totally understand that. I've been a whistleblower myself once upon a time. It does not go well for you. It says in March 2020, Dr. Robert Kaldick addressed the House committee to confirm his role and responsibilities as the federal government's top preparedness official, coordinating the government's C virus response. And cover-ups so deep to this day, I still say C virus because every time I said the actual name, I'd get in trouble with YouTube doing videos. As an assistant secretary for preparedness and response at the Department of Health and Human Services, Kaldick offered a lengthy statement to lawmakers on the four principal functions of his role. None of those functions involved downplaying without scientific evidence a theory that the virus emerged from a laboratory in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But that's what Kaldick now says he did by assisting Anthony Fauci, America's former top infectious disease advisor, in his effort to suppress the lab leak theory. Kaldick says it's a decision that keeps him up at night. Literally, I wake up at usually about 2 or 3 a.m. and think about it, honestly, because it's something that we've all played a role in, Kaldick told Sky News in an exclusive interview. Are you sure you're not getting up at 2 or 3 a.m. to go to the bathroom because you're old? Just asking. I know I couldn't resist. For much of 2020 and 2021, anyone who brought up the possibility that the C virus emerged from Wuhan risked being labeled a conspiracy theorist by legacy media and fact checkers in quotation, because we all know, especially if you're talking about Facebook, that fact checkers, it's all opinion based. That's been admitted in court by Facebook at this point. It started in February 2020 when Senator Tom Cotton appeared on TV and raised questions about the Chinese government's duplicity and dishonesty on the matter. Though Cotton explicitly stated that we don't have evidence that this disease originated there, he was promptly accused of spreading a conspiracy theory by the New York Times and the Washington Post. The latter eventually issued a correction. The former has not, the former being New York Times. Big tech also got in on the action, including Facebook. The social media giant began banning content that suggested the C virus might have been man-made. So basically, this is a top government official who was told to shut the hell up under the Fauci's administration and not even suggest that it came from China. And Helter says, why would anybody be afraid of being called a conspiracy theorist these days? If somebody calls you that, that's a badge of honor. Yeah, but on social media and in like legacy media, as they put it, you can get in a lot of trouble, especially if you have an important position like this guy did. So if he says, I think it came from China, and Facebook fact checkers attack him, and Twitter at that time attacked him, and then MSNBC attacks him, then he's out of a job, and he probably won't work in that field again. And Josie says, how about the Chinese lab that was found in California? Is it possible it came from there? Who knows? You'll never get the truth of it. Not really. You're not likely to get the truth, unfortunately. And then by the time anything that closely resembles actual guaranteed truth does come around, there'll be nobody left to really care. It's like if it was revealed how Kennedy was actually assassinated tomorrow, there's very few people left except for a handful of I told you so guys. Nothing is going to be done about it. Nothing's going to really change. To most people, it won't really matter, unfortunately. Just like I said, there's a handful of guys that have their conspiracy theories about it that are like, hey, see, I knew it. But aside from that, what's it going to satisfy at this point? It's been too long. It says there was a respiratory C virus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Jon Stewart said mockingly to Colbert, oh, you know what we could ask, who we could ask, the Wuhan respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think? And that was a snippet from the Jon Stewart show, I guess, mocking that at the time, but it didn't go anywhere. Sometimes comedy, if you think those two are funny, will expose things that other people can't talk about. Didn't work. Did not work. Merv says, don't tell Bob Mendez that they have serial numbers on gold bars. Hey, we're getting to that. We're getting to that, actually, because that's in here today. Speaking of which, oh, I wanted to do this one first. Because, you know, it doesn't pay to whistleblow. I always warn people about that. Everybody always says that. This is from the Associated Press. Oh, see something, say something, and transparency, and we have all these government agencies, and you need to report this and that. You can actually get in trouble for not reporting something that you know about from a whistleblower perspective. But when you do go and blow that whistle, don't expect to ever be able to work again, at least not in that field. And I see Bingo is here, and Gary Edwards is here. It says, whistleblower allegation, Harvard muzzled disinformation team after $500 million Zuckerberg donation. That's interesting. A prominent disinformation scholar who left Harvard University in August has accused the school of muzzling her speech and stifling, then dismantling her research team as it launched a deep dive in late 2021 into a trove of Facebook files she considers the most important documents in internet history. The actions impacting Joan Donovan's work coincided with a $500 million donation to Harvard by a foundation run by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan. In a whistleblower disclosure made public Monday, Donovan seeks investigations into, quote, inappropriate influence from Harvard's general counsel, the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, and the U.S. Department of Education. Ha ha! Don't want the whistle blown on you? Pay people off. The CEO of Whistleblower Aid, a legal nonprofit supporting Donovan, called the alleged behavior by Harvard's Kennedy School and its dean a shocking betrayal of academic integrity at the elite school. Are you surprised? That's all they do these days. And keep in mind, Whistleblower Aid is a legal nonprofit, and it says it's supporting Donovan. It supports people and provides legal aid for people who are whistleblowers and get screwed for doing it. Because it's not like on TV where you're a whistleblower and they run around with you on their shoulders cheering your name and you get a fat check. That doesn't happen in real life. Your life is over if you blow the whistle, no matter how bad it is. Whether Harvard acted at the company's direction or took the initiative on their own to protect Facebook's interests, the outcome is the same. Corporate interests are undermining research and academic freedom to the detriment of the public, CEO Libby Liu said in a press statement. In response, the Kennedy School rejected the disclosure's allegations of unfair treatment and donor interference. The narrative is full of inaccuracies and baseless insinuations, particularly the suggestion that Harvard Kennedy School allowed Facebook to dictate its approach to research, spokesman James Smith said in a statement. The whistleblower aid statement quotes Donovan accusing Dean Douglas Elmendorf of subjecting her team to death by 1,000 cuts, or actually it should be death by 1,000 paper cuts, honey, after she began making robust plans in October 2021 to create a research clearinghouse for the so-called Facebook files, which were gathered by former employee Frances Haugen to highlight public harms. Following the disclosures, Zuckerberg changed Facebook's name to Meta. So she was investigating Facebook, stumbled over something. Harvard suddenly gets a $500 million donation from a company that Zuckerberg owns on the side. And then she's discharged and her team is dismantled and the cases are closed. That sounds about right to me. That's how it goes. And Gary says those who have the gold make the rules. Yeah, that's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rule. Nature Nerd says Dr. Fauci has an island where he experimented, I guess you mean, on hundreds of monkeys and animals, just evil supervillain. Yeah, it sounds like a supervillain, doesn't it? The modern equivalent of a comic book supervillain. Urban says a conspiracy theory without the theory is just a conspiracy, which is really no different from a long-range business plan. Excuse me. Okay. I thought this was fascinating. And of course, she does need legal representation, and nobody's going to help her. And she will very likely not be able to get a job at any other college or university because she was a whistleblower. It always blows back on the person who's in the position of doing the right thing. However, if she had just shut up and went about her business, and this ever blew up with Facebook, whatever she was researching, and they backtracked and found out that she was investigating it at Harvard and walked away from the project, she would be under investigation for not coming forward. See how there's a double standard to the whole whistleblowing thing? It's no wonder. Nobody wants to whistleblow. There's no benefit to it. You just get screwed. You get screwed whether you do right or not. And Deanna says those poor beagles, not Snoopy. The Daisy Hill Puppy Farm is on Dr. Fauci's island. Daisy Hill Puppy Farm. And like I said, I've been a whistleblower. And all you do is get into trouble and then eventually lose your job, if not immediately. And then, like I said, good luck working in that profession again. Good luck with that, because you will be screwed over. Speaking of which, yeah, Monkey says it's a lose-lose situation. It is. On the same subject, we're going to jump all the way to New York. Just to cement the point for any of you newcomers, New York Post, ex-New York Attorney General lawyer claims he was fired after reporting misconduct by the chief prosecutor. What do you know? Blew his whistle, lost his job. A senior lawyer at the New York Attorney General's office claims he was fired after trying to expose supposed misconduct by a chief prosecutor who he alleges has hidden potential conflicts of interest and controversial professional relationships, according to a new report. Controversial professional relationships in New York, in the New York lawmaking community, say it isn't so. John Olsky claims he spent 2 years flagging concerns to his bosses about Chief Prosecutor Jose Maldonado, but that his employer dismissed the allegations before firing him this past October, the Daily Beast reported. 2 anonymous people told the Daily Beast the senior lawyer's concerns were simply a personal vendetta, while a third called the 74-page report he wrote on Maldonado a manifesto. As a result, Oleski, who previously led trial teams that won some of the AG's biggest cases, has turned into an unlikely whistleblower aiming at Maldonado, who currently serves as the chief of the office's powerful criminal division, according to the Daily Beast. I think it's interesting that the people that from the Attorney General's office that the Daily Beast spoke to, they said they talked to 2 anonymous people that said he just has a personal vendetta. And the third person said that his 74-page report is a manifesto, but neither of those 3 people said that he's wrong or making anything up. Just that he has a vendetta. Even if he does have a vendetta against Maldonado, is it true? Is it true? If it's true, there's a problem, whether he has a personal issue with Maldonado or not. It says John Olsky, a former senior lawyer at the New York Attorney General's office, claimed he was fired after attempting to expose misconduct by Chief Prosecutor Jose Maldonado. Olsky did not report to Maldonado, but the Daily Beast reported he became frustrated with how Maldonado ran his division and discovered what his report dubbed apparently serious misconduct due to falsifying his resume, hiding conflicts of interests with OAG's enforcement targets. A spokesperson for AG, Letita James, if I'm pronouncing that right, office said it did not ignore Olsky's report and takes every complaint seriously and has always taken appropriate action when warranted. When they had permission is what that means. So there you go, is another person who tried to whistleblow on some dirty business going on at the Attorney General's office in New York, lost his job. Josie says in 2020, I had a Facebook account, a lot of preparedness for big virus coming more and stuff like that. At the time, I worked through the threat preparedness with the health department. Next comment. So I don't know what I trespass on, but anyhow, they deleted my whole account. They're real touchy. And I brought it up before, and I'm sure a lot of you know, I got suspended on Facebook once upon a time for talking about Randy Savage because I said macho man and they thought I was making fun of homosexuals. So God knows, it could be anything. It could be anything. They're fact checkers, whether or not they got enough cream in their coffee that day. Urban says, remember the 1981 film Escape from New York with Kurt Russell? It seems so quaint now compared to actual New York City today. Yeah, I remember that film. And then the sequel, Escape from LA. And Gary Edwards says, monkey see, monkey get the boot. Yeah, I know. That's why you have those 3 monkeys. You see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I mean, don't look, don't listen, and shut your mouth. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. I promise. Please let me keep my job. But I thought that was interesting, and that it tied in with what I was already talking about. That, yeah, it just does not go well for whistleblowers. It's a dirty business, but they expect it of you. And if you don't, and it comes up that you knew something and said nothing, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You're in a lot of legal trouble. The government will come down on you for not having said something when you had the opportunity, even though, again, saying something will ruin your career. That guy's not going to work in state government at any level in any state again. It's over. And Gary says it's the old saying, just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they aren't out to get you. Exactly. Now, this is from News 4 New York. And this was brought up a little bit earlier by somebody. He says gold bars featured in Bob Mendez's bribery case are linked to a 2013 robbery. Records show. One more comment here from Urban. It says it's like when something serious happens in the neighborhood and all the police tell you to do is observe, report, record, report, like that ever actually does anything. Yeah, you want to put yourself on the line and be a rat in the neighborhood and have the neighbors set fire to your garbage cans, you can go ahead and run your mouth all day. Also, if you come to the police and you know a lot about what happened or even a little about what happened, the detective may suspect you and then they'll harass you for the next 18 months or think you're connected to it somehow. They just know you're guilty. They had a gut feeling. I had a gut feeling. And again, you know, my wife watches a lot of those crime dramas. And if you really pay attention to them, and I don't mean like, you know, CSI Miami or something like that. I mean actual docudramas where it's a real case and they're walking you through and they interview people and stuff like that. She watches those kinds of things. The detectives always do the same thing. They latch onto somebody, dig their claws and their teeth in, and harass the hell out of them. I just know they're guilty. I've been doing this for a long time. I had a gut feeling. I knew he was the guy. And then after chasing him around and harassing him for 2 years, find out it's somebody else by accident. You know, it's ridiculous. It's like, do you even know how to do your jobs at all? But here we go. At least 4 gold bars tied to the FBI search of Senator Robert Mendez's home. And he's a senator of New Jersey, right? Had been directly linked to a New Jersey businessman now accused of bribing the state's senior senator. Bergen County prosecutor records from a 2013 robbery case show. The businessman, Fred Dybes, reported to police he was the victim of an armed robbery in 2013, and he asked police to recover the gold bars stolen from him. In the 2013 robbery, Dybes reported $500,000 in cash and 22 gold bars were stolen. Wow. Edgewater police records show. Police later caught 4 suspects with the stolen goods. To get his property back, Dybes signed property release forms certifying the gold bars belonged to him, the records show. Each gold bar had its own serial number. Dybes said to investigators in a 2014 transcript made by prosecutors and police who recovered and returned to Dybes the stolen valuables. They're all stamped. You'll never see 2 stamped the same way. A decade later, the FBI said 4 of the gold bars with unique serial numbers has come into the possession of Senator Mendez and his wife Nadine. 2 bars were found during the FBI's search of the Clifton home, while an indictment stated that Nadine Mendez gave the other 2 gold bars to a jeweler to sell, but the photos of those 2 bars were recovered. In 2023 bribery indictment against the Democratic senator and Dybes prosecutors included photos of some of the alleged bribes found in Mendez's home, including 4 gold bars. The serial numbers of the 4 gold bars in the bribery indictment appear to be an exact match to 4 of the gold bars Dybes, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, certified as stolen and returned to him in the 2013 robbery case. And then they go on to explain serial numbers as if nobody knows how serial numbers work for like 3 paragraphs. So, yeah, another senator caught in bribery and corruption. Oh, by the way, if you find gold bars or you come by gold bars questionably, just for the sake of argument, not telling anybody what to do, not trying to create a criminal, would it make sense to melt it down, make it something else? You know, you can buy a smelt on eBay. Get the little one with the little pot to melt down metals. Mint your own coins, put your face on it, something. And Gary says those who have the gold bars make the rules. Nature Nerd says there are laws where you can pay for houses and even pay off debt in gold bars instead of cash. And Monkey says, who the hell carries gold bars casually? Extremely wealthy congressman, apparently. I can't do that. Can you? I can't afford to pay attention. Dragon says he paid the senator in gold bars, presumably because gold is untraceable. He knew full well gold bars can be tracked back to him. It's like bribing someone with a personal check. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. But like I said, what do? If you're that concerned, just throwing it out there for the sake of argument, you can melt that mess down. You can melt it down and do something else with it. Gary says the nail that snitches up get the gold hammer. Okay, I see. The nail that snitches up gets the gold hammer. That was just really stupid. And that's the arrogance of it. The arrogance of these people that it never even occurred to him to get rid of those or to alter them. Hell, he could have shaved a layer off so that you couldn't see the stamp. Something, come on. And then his wife, stupid as she is, takes them and sells them to a jeweler like he's not going to keep a record of it. That's how they tracked it to the jeweler. Yeah, look, I got these. Like he's going to lose his business by not keeping a record and raising a flag if something's wrong. Seriously. These people, they're so sure of themselves that it doesn't even occur to them. You think they'd be smarter than that? They were smart enough to get into Congress, not smart enough to know how to manipulate gold. It doesn't take a criminal mind, just a little common sense. A little bit of common sense. Where'd this bar come from? You don't want to know. Oh, well, let me go get a smelt off eBay and melt it down. Oh, man. I don't know what to say, folks. And Gary says, how many times did the corrupt couple not get caught? Probably 100 times. And that's the thing. Who knows how many times they've been doing something they shouldn't be doing and how long it's going to go. Raccoon says AOC is in Congress. I don't think it takes much brains. She was smart enough to get in there. She's smarter than me. I'm not in Congress. I'm not a representative anywhere. And again, just like with Biden, I wonder how much of what she does is plausible deniability. I wonder how much of it is an act to redirect people. And Gary says, are there laws against destroying money, including gold bars and the like? I don't think you're allowed to destroy cash. If you have damaged bills, you're supposed to turn them in so that they can be reprinted. They'll destroy the old one and reprint it. As far as gold, I don't think there's any rules about that. I know you can melt down jewelry all the time. There's a lot of people that do that as a hobby. That's why I said you could buy a mini smelt on eBay, because there are people that like scavenge for gold jewelry or buy scrap gold, and they melt it down and repurpose it, make other jewelry out of it, or press it into coin or little nuggets or something. They make little ingots. But I don't know about unless it's a legitimate minted coin from the US Mint. You know what I mean? Because then that's official currency. Otherwise, I don't think there's any rules about it outside of that. And if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me there. As we move around and we jump to climate change. climate change, ladies and gentlemen. Raccoon says a friend at work today told me he found a box of bills from the 20s. Are those worth anything? Yeah, they are. They are, because any currency that's out of circulation, you can sell. And I would, if it was me, I would clean them and press them out and possibly even get them graded, because they do have a grading service for that. If they're particularly valuable, then you can list them and sell them on eBay. Otherwise, you can sell them raw on eBay as long as you have a lot of photographs. But yeah, any currency that's out of circulation is worth something, and the older the better, to a point, especially if it's gold certificates. Fox News, it says the COP28 or COP28 climate conference is not just the Super Bowl of virtue signaling, it's doing real damage. It's tempting to dismiss COP28 as the Super Bowl of virtue signaling, but that would be to ignore the massive damage being done to our country by the unrealistic and costly climate policies of the Biden White House. The administration's wrong-headed leadership on phasing out fossil fuels, which currently provide nearly 80% of U.S. energy, is a highlight of COP28. Their policies are making Americans poorer and less secure. And there's a lot of hypocrisy around that conference. And I'm hoping they're going to get to it in this article, because I don't read them all. It says, to wit, since Joe Biden took office, electricity prices have soared 24%. During President Trump's 4 years in office, average electricity prices actually declined. COP28, the annual climate talkathon, has had its light moments. Some 80,000 attendees are participating, a large number of whom are traveling by emissions-spewing private jets. Over the weekend, some of those planes were frozen to icy runways in Munich as global warming was trumped by unseasonal cold and blizzards which blanketed much of Europe. There you go. Moreover, the event is being held in Abu Dhabi, a major oil-producing nation, and hosted by the Sultan Al Jaber, head of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Committee. In the lead up to the meeting, leaked briefing documents revealed Jaber, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, was plotting to use his position as host to negotiate new oil and gas deals with foreign governments, even as the central theme of COP28 was the phase out of fossil fuels. Worse, a video from 2 weeks ago surfaced on Monday in which Jaber questioned the entire premise behind ditching oil, gas, and coal. There is no science out there, no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve 1.5%, Al Jaber said. He was also critical of the questioner, saying he had anticipated a sober and mature conversation, not an alarmist one. The Biden White House embraces extreme climate alarmism and is sending scores of officials, including Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Vice President Kamala Harris, and climate czar John Kerry to COP28. They will wave a white flag on behalf of American voters eager to surrender one of our nation's greatest geopolitical advantages, cheap, abundant, and reliable fossil fuels, and also tackle, according to the State Department, issues related to the nexus of climate and gender global health, subnational diplomacy, youth, and more. Wow. In her opening remarks, Vice President Harris parroted Biden's conviction that climate change poses the greatest existential threat to our country and touted what she described as almost $1 trillion in new spending approved by the Biden White House for the climate agenda. There goes your tax dollars. There goes your tax dollars. Unbelievable. Raccoon says there were 20s and a couple of hundreds. Gary says silver certificates. Yeah, the on the currency where on the bottom of the currency, it used to say that the bill is can be exchanged for silver upon demand, and it usually has a blue colored stamp instead of a green one. And I think the gold certificates had a red stamp, and it says that it's exchangeable for its equivalency of gold. Back when you could do that at the bank. All People says both AOC and Joe Biden are faking their stupidity. Yeah, like I said, you never know. It could be plausible deniability. Nature Nerd says Venezuelan communists are so greedy to mismanage their vast oil resources into the ground, but as soon as neighboring Guyana is doing well with oil, gas, and diamonds, they want to annex it and invade it. And Dragon says the fact that anybody, including themselves, even regard themselves as credible is extraordinary. The summit leaders are a bunch of billionaires flying in private jets to a conference on pollution. Yeah, and there, as was pointed out, with the hypocrisy of who's holding the summit here, who's in charge, this Al Jaber guy, it's a complete conflict of interest for him to be there. Helter says holding the climate summit in UAE is like holding an anti-piracy summit in Somalia. It's just a big circus, and we're paying for it. Correct. Nature Nerd says an oil sultan should not be on an environmentalist board. Yeah, and that's kind of the hypocrisy of his presence even being there. And Urban says, never mind climate change. That's old news. Climate boiling is the new fear meme. Boiling. We're boiling. Paul DiMartino, it's awesome. It's an awesome day, brother, when I can catch you live. Keep up the good work. Semper Fi. Absolutely. Glad you could make it. And Merv says it's great having 20 shell companies to hide Chinese bribery money from the IRS until you get caught. Biden 2023. Yeah, no kidding. And Gary says they're not really trying to save the climate. They want to weaken the country until it falls. Absolutely. And Monkey said if Biden wins 2024, the country is doomed. Well, if he wins, you'll know the previous election was probably a fraud. 81 million votes indeed. Half of them are in graveyards. And Adrian is here, says good afternoon. And Nature Nerd says with the technology we have, we should be able to have cheaper, more abundant, cleaner energy than ever before, but the government keeps interfering to make our electricity more expensive. And Bingo says, did you discuss the explosion last night outside DC? No, I didn't hear that. I did not hear about that. And Gary says, I couldn't dream up a cringier summit than a climate change and gender junk. Yeah, and I love how Kerry has to, and Vice President Harris have to throw gender inclusion into the mix with that whole conference. Because here it is. It says issues related to the nexus of climate and gender, global health, subnational diplomacy, youth, and more. We need gender in there. We need gender in there, John Kerry. We need gender in there, Kamala Harris. Are you serious? Are you serious? And All People says climate agenda money is being laundered for other illegal things. And that could be. That could be. But they want to tax you to death to pay for this, and it can't work. And to try to change everything to batteries and not have a plan for charging those batteries or an efficient way of mining the resources to make batteries. Because you have to think about how much earth has to be moved, how many rocks have to be crushed, how many massive diesel-powered machines it takes to produce lithium, for example, copper, any of the materials that are used in the manufacturing of these large-scale batteries outweighs how much emissions there are from regular automobile use. A ton of industrial waste comes out of the mining of the resources to make those oversized batteries, which are extremely dangerous. If they're punctured or there's some discharge from those batteries, they will burn out, and they cannot put those fires out. They can contain the fire, but they can't really put it out. And not all fire departments are equipped with a halon system. They don't all have, it's a halon, right? the foam trucks for chemical fires and things like that. They can't do it. A lot of American industries being crushed. And Bingo says he has to go. Well, glad you could join us today, Bingo. And Nature Nerd says Oregon is trying to get rid of its electric dams and trying to ban new gas or new natural gas power. And Urban says if I ran the World Emissions Regulatory Agency, the first thing on my agenda would be to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. Yeah, there you go. But speaking of agencies shutting down, don't know if you've seen this in the news yet, and this comes from the Western Journal. Remington closes up shop in New York after 200 years. Heads for a more welcoming atmosphere in Georgia. And a bunch of my comments have disappeared. Did somebody put something up that was naughty? Because I had a whole bunch just go blank. And one more here from Gary. He says burning metals are hard to extinguish. Yeah, absolutely. So Remington is walking out on New York. Closed up shop after 200 years manufacturing in New York. That's a legacy. That's a legacy. And they've had to turn their back on the state. Article reads, one of the most fascinatingly infuriating idioms of the left is their utter inability to think more than a single step, if even that, ahead. To the left, every issue can be solved with some sort of emotional outburst or half-baked plan, irrespective of any potential consequences 3 or 4 steps down the road. Well, I can see that the Western Journal is going to have a very one-sided article. I can't say I disagree, though. And few examples make that clearer than the left's never-ending crusade against the Second Amendment. To the far left, getting rid of guns will somehow stop all wanton murder in the country. Now, if you were to say that getting rid of unjust murder in America was your ultimate end goal in of itself, that's a perfectly noble, if not naive, goal. The issue is that the left has utterly convinced itself the only way to stop murder on a meaningful level in the country is to outlaw guns or harass perfectly law-abiding citizens. Spoiler alert. This should go without saying, but harassing law-abiding citizens and outlawing guns will do less than nothing to deter the criminal element. Just look at the frequency and size of shootings in states with restrictive gun laws. Chicago comes to mind. But apart from the inefficiency of the left's solution to America's issues, they are also incapable of thinking on a more macro level. Do you know what happens when you spend ceaseless breath attacking someone's integrity, character, and purpose in society on a daily basis? That someone will tend not to like you very much and probably look to get away from you. And that is exactly what the iconic Remington Arms, the current iteration of the historic Remington Arms Company, or it says Rem Arms, and one of the most recognizable and largest gun manufacturers in the country, has decided to do with one of its New York facilities. Ilion, which is a village in Herkimer County, New York, will be losing its facility in March of 2024, according to letters sent to union leaders obtained by the Utica Observer Dispatch. So yeah, go woke, go broke, I guess is how that goes. And Urban says if there's a bunch of comments and a road disappearing, it may have been a spam round. That's possible. And then Monkey says, good job, New York. You ruined jobs for those working at Remington. Yeah. And that could have been a career job for a lot of people. Rodney says Remington went belly up in 2020. What's called Remington now is not really the same. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And Nature Nerd says, what a shame. Remington is a legendary brand, been in New York since the 13 colonies. And Paul says, is it true the migrants have access to VA benefits? I heard that somewhere. I'm not sure about that. I kind of heard the same thing, but I haven't seen an actual report on it. But if I see a news article on the subject, I'll grab it for another day. And Merv says we're going to need a lot more diesel generators if we're going to do this climate change agenda the way they're going about it, and more taxes. No kidding. And Helter says New York State used to have so many gun manufacturers located within its borders, not just Remington and Ilion, but the original Ithaca Gun Company in its namesake. And Paul says VA being used for their health care ? I have been waiting for over a year for help. Does anybody else know about this? Gary says illegals get more dough than our vets. And Dragon says there was a time Remington made the most consistent ammo available, right down to components like primers, lead shot bullets, and brass available for reloaders. They started going downhill 20 years ago. And then Deanna says there was a comment that was quickly deleted just a minute ago. Okay. But that's a shame that they're driven to that point because of constantly being attacked, probably undue taxes. They're probably being taxed to death by the state. Really unhealthy regulations in the state that affect their customers. I wouldn't want to be there either. And it's a shame when you're talking about a legacy business that has been in one place for a really long period of time, feeling like they have no other alternative but to walk away, to give up, and to go somewhere else, which is what they're doing here. And Georgia doesn't have those kind of restrictions, really. It's pretty open source here as far as gun laws and gun regulations are concerned, especially compared to an eastern state right now like New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts are all pretty bad. And again, I grew up in Massachusetts, and even when I was younger, it wasn't so simple. You had to get a firearms license, and you had to have a separate license for the ammunition already. And it was a big paper card. It was like this, and you were supposed to carry it with you. And like, how am I going to carry this around and not wreck it? You had to have a license. You had to have an ammunition license for the possession of mace. If you carried a can of mace or a little mace bottle on your keychain or something like that, you could get arrested for having it. And this was in the 80s in Massachusetts. This was in the 80s. You had to have an ammunition license. You had to buy an ammunition license. I think it was like $15, but still, because I had one. Urban says illegal migration, crime increase, organized looting, child grooming, and what's with the world's Christian churches going over to the dark side? How's the church doing in New York out of curiosity? Urban, you know what the problem is with the churches? They sold their soul. And this is why I warn people, if your church in the United States is a 501c3 charity, they had to sell a piece of their integrity to get it. Because in order to maintain that 501c3 charity status, there are certain things they ought not to do according to the government. So you will not go to that church and get the truth about anything. This is how it is, especially after the C virus. And it's a complaint I hear all the time from people. Church doors were closed because of the pandemic. And when I came back to church, I didn't recognize it. And then the pastor and everybody was super woke and super inclusive and super equity and inclusion. And what the hell happened? What happened? It was already kind of off the rails a little bit. Now it's just gone. It rolled down the hill into a ditch. But if you're dealing with a church, it's a 501c3 charity. If they wanted to talk about biblical truth, they could be very heavily restricted. And never mind the fact that the whole concept of Christianity is jaded in the Western world anyways. There's no biblical truth. You don't go to church, listen to a band for 45 minutes, pass the plate around, have the pastor take one sentence out of somewhere in the New Testament completely out of context and tie it into an hour-long story about a fishing trip he took with his dad when he was 12, and get any biblical truth out of that. But that's what you come to expect. And then pass the plate again. That's what happens in the Western world in Christian churches now. You can't do. That's why my wife and I study on our own. We've been studying on our own for like more than a decade and getting a hell of a lot more out of it. And before I wrap up here, Urban says, interesting. So the gender socialists and atheists are essentially reversing the separation of church and state. Yeah, the purpose of church and state. I know I'm going over, but it's okay. If I help anybody, I'll go over. The separation of church and state, the function of it, the idea behind it is to keep the government out of the church's business so the people can worship the way they want to without being hindered or by being hobbled by the government. The people that came to the United States were coming from countries where there was a state government. And if you did anything outside of that, you could get in a lot of trouble for it. Up to execution, depending upon where you were. Now it's kind of been twisted where people are under the impression that separation of church and state means that the church stays out of government's business, stays out of this, and anything associated with it. So elections, school, public school. Oh no, you can't talk about God in public school because separation of church and state. Well, wait a minute, that's not how that works. It is if the Supreme Court says so. It's unfortunate, and we can continue that. I was thinking about doing a series on that because there's so many misconceptions in the modern Christian church. It's frightening. It's really frightening. But for now, I got to go ahead and wrap up. Again, this is Coffee Talk, or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting every day, or Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Doug says, you are totally right on target. I try. I try. My wife and I have been, and she is a graduate from a seminary university and learned nothing there. Seminary, where your preacher, pastor, bishop, minister came from. The purpose of a seminary university is to teach you how to run a church. It does not teach anything about the Bible. Big surprise. She went there hoping to get biblical truth and didn't get it. But anyways, again, you can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, as well as Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And so thanks to everybody who was able to join us here today. And we can continue that discussion on tomorrow's broadcast. If you guys are interested, just let me know in the comments. So I'll go ahead and wrap up. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will see you again soon.